Hello, welcome back to Up the Villa. This is our match preview, Villa v Cardiff in the FA Cup. Joined by Ivan, a good friend of the channel. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, Luke. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, and I think the main reason why Ivan's here is that he's wrote a book, and the book is out soon. So I really want your book to do well, as probably you really want it to do well, and I think Villa fans, it's something that they will want to get their hands on and have a read as well. So talk to me about the book. What's it about? Sort of why did you write the book?
Yeah, it's a good question. I often wonder myself. So the book's out on Monday. It's called Only the Real Thing, and it's the story of Aston Villa in the Coca-Cola Cup between 1993 and 1996. Obviously, within those years, we won the Coca-Cola Cup twice, in 1994 against Manchester United, and then in 96 against Leeds. Really kind of pivotal time for me, at my age of kind of being a sort of just a young sort of pre-teenager watching Villa, and seeing us win major trophies, which obviously we haven't done since. So yeah, it's a really kind of important time for me, but I think quite an important time for football in general. So the early years of the Premier League and some of the changes that were happening in terms of football generally, but then equally for Villa and the sort of transition from Ron Atkinson with the first win to Brian Little in the second. Two very different sides, very different styles of play, and I suppose a bit of a labour of love for me, just because it was such an important time for me as a Villa fan. And when we had the 30th anniversary of the '94 win, I just thought, you know what, I should try and do something to do with this. And I was like, went to a lot of events around it, and met some of the former players, and just seemed a really good opportunity to try and put some words down about it, and was lucky enough that Pitch Publishing, who have published the book, were interested in the idea and have kind of supported me through it. So yeah, quite a journey.
And how long did it take? I mean, I'm not very good at writing. I mean, we did used to have the website, and you used to write on it, and Ryan used to write on it a lot as well, and a lot of people contributed. So, I mean, where do you even start?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, Luke. I mean, I've always been someone who's a bit like, when I was at school, a bit like a working to a deadline sort of thing, rather than getting ahead of myself. So, I mean, I had a deadline of the 31st of August 2024. So that was always kind of in my head. And to be honest, I probably made a rod for my own back, in the sense that I kind of crammed a lot of work in kind of over the summer, and particularly the writing of it. But I think it's the research, I guess, that takes the time, because the danger is you kind of remember these periods and these games, but actually the detail you don't remember. So you don't remember who came on as a sub in the semi-final against Tranmere away from home, and things like that. So I think it's the time spent in really getting all those kind of that factual stuff. And I think for me, as a as you mentioned, I used to write for you guys, and was really grateful for that opportunity. And I think for me, it's often making that link between kind of sort of nostalgic historical stuff and the present. So for me, it was like the real kind of idea of the book came about. I mean, if you'll probably remember, it was about this sort of time when we were talking about Conference League and Champions League qualification, and that idea of like a choice. And people were saying, oh, well, what would you prefer, to win something or to qualify for the Champions League? And I think that idea really kind of pulled a lot of the book together, in the sense that obviously 30 years ago, we won these major trophies that were still, I think, form a really big part of people's Villa history. And you only have to see the Muller shirts around Villa Park now to know that. So I think it's finding that angle, I suppose, that also connects to the present day, but then it is nostalgic as well. So yeah, quite a process.
It is a massive part of our history, and kind of ties into like obviously an era of our most successful time. You know, we won that trophy twice within a number of years, and we've not won anything since. So I'm hoping that you've got sort of like the second book lined up, and you're going to be talking about 2025 FA Cup. But so would you, the book in general, then, without giving any sort of spoilers away, is it more of like your personal experience of that time, or is it more telling the story of like in a historical way?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think probably more of a historical sense. So it kind of feeds off the different campaigns and the players and the managers, and very much kind of how that particularly focused on the change to do with the Premier League. So sort of really picking up in the season before they won the League Cup. So when Atkinson's side finished second to Manchester United, and some of the sort of changes that were coming then. And obviously then Atkinson winning that League Cup trophy. So very much from a sort of historical sense, but also my kind of own memories of that time. But then I think how it very much changed in terms of a very short period between winning it again in 1996. And obviously Big Ron and Brian Little were two very different managers who had very different playing styles. I like to think Brian Little was quite ahead of his time in some ways, I mean, maybe it will remind us too much about last night, but, he played a back three and wing backs and things like that, at a time when that wasn't particularly kind of something that managers did. So I think it was a real change. And I think the change in terms of, foreign players, if you look at, the 94 side was quite a British side, a lot of Irish players, McGrath, Townsend, Staunton and Houghton, and then a sort of smattering of kind of some sort of more creative players like Dalian and Tony Daly. But then by the time you get to 96, you've got people like Savo Milosevic, who, so that to me is like a massive change in just how generally footballers were being recruited and played into sides. So I think it's that journey, not only through sort of a personal sense, but the journey that the club and then by default football in general was on. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to get it. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to the book in the description of this video, and fans can click on it and they'll be able to find it as well. So, Ivan, I mean, we've got to talk about Villa. That's why we're here. How are you feeling as a fan at the minute?
Well, I think if you'd have asked me at the final whistle on Saturday, as opposed to the final whistle last night at Selhurst Park, I'd probably get two quite different answers. I think that it's been a hell of a ride, and I think that if you'd, without going back to the 90s, and I know Ryan has said this to me in the past, if you'd have said in 1996, when you stood at Wembley, that fast forward 30 odd years and you haven't won another major trophy, you'd have thought, what? That'd be ridiculous, So in that context, what's happened in the past 2-3 years under Emery is unbelievably exceptional, isn't it? I think that, I often reference my son, I first game back in the Championship, at home against Rotherham. And then a few years later, he's watching Bayern Munich and Juventus in the Champions League at Villa Park. So that journey is exceptional. So I think you have to kind of remember that. But these elements of this season have been really disappointing. And I think particularly that league form, the away form, I think is my biggest concern. And I think my biggest thing, Luke, is we've failed to really build on what have been some really positive one-off results. And I think, I know you've done your sort of reaction to last night, but I think that's how I felt. I felt really pissed off last night because I thought, we'd really kind of felt like a step forward against Chelsea and kind of got that win, which we needed. But once again, we failed to follow that up. And I think that really it's a blemish on what will be a season that holds some incredibly special memories for Villa fans, So yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's echoed across all Villa fans, really, because you look at the Champions League and we've sort of surpassed what I expected us to be able to do. FA Cup, we're in uncharted territory at the minute, going into hopefully the quarterfinals. But it just feels disappointing with that league form, doesn't it? And the thing is, though, we started away from home very good, didn't we? Didn't we win our first 3 away games? We beat West Ham, Leicester.
Yeah.
I can't think who else, but we actually started off quite well, and now we've sort of like fallen off a bit of a cliff. So why do you think the Premier League is so inconsistent from us? Why can't we defend, and why aren't we able to build on it? Because you look at the last week, and you've drew to the champions. They're going to win the league. You've beat Chelsea at home in a game that was a must win for Villa, really. And then we play like that against Palace. I struggle to understand the correlation between the good and the bad. It's like if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's very bad. But in between, we can't find the medium between just getting a decent balance.
Yeah, and I think there's a real combination of issues for me, and some of it sounds like excuses, but what's the stat of 11 different centre back partnerships in the 28 games, something like that. That ain't going to help, is it? That isn't going to help. But that is an excuse. But I think that coupled to other things, I think that people don't like it, but Emmy hasn't been great this season, and you don't get me wrong, he's exceptional and makes some good saves. But there have been times where I thought, that first goal last night, could he do better? Maybe. Maybe he wasn't fit, but I think that that those sort of things have come together. I think that the loss of the midfield too last season, and when Kamara was fit, of Kamara and Luiz was so important. And I think that you can't underestimate the loss of Dougie in that kind of slight falling away of kind of league form. And again, injuries generally, but it's difficult not to sound like you're making excuses, isn't it? But because every team has had injuries, but that perhaps points to why generally a lot of teams have been a bit inconsistent. I think the frustrating thing for me with our injuries is that we kind of know, like we know that sort of defensive midfield is a little bit of a problem. So last night it seemed slightly strange to go back to that idea that we were going to go and kind of try and be really solid with a kind of a patched up, back four or back five, and then a two very tired players in McGinn and Tielemans, and actually it might be an opportunity to actually think, well, you know what, maybe we go for it, and the high of Saturday with Rashford and Asensio, let's try and play off that early on and kind of get going in the game. But it's difficult, isn't it? And people, I think a lot of people have said this as a result of last night. It's okay to be really positive about Emery and the experiences that he's given us, but equally, it's okay to look back at something like last night and think, what, that wasn't acceptable,
Yeah, I'm with you. Right, so FA Cup. This feels quite important now. I think I don't know whether last night sort of put a little bit more pressure on it to get through and play well and do well. But you've spoke about what the League Cup means to you. Like, what does the FA Cup mean to you as a fan? And do you think we can go far in this FA Cup? Like, how far can we go in it?
Well, I think the opportunity is there to go very deep. I think that, Friday is a huge opportunity, and that isn't, I would never want to come on here or anywhere else and, pour scorn on Cardiff, because it's a massive game for them as well. But let's be clear, it's a massive opportunity for Villa to get into the quarterfinals. So I think that in itself means that we have a really good opportunity. Obviously, teams are no longer in it. Liverpool are no longer in it. Arsenal are no longer in it. So again, that gives us that opportunity. I think for me, the FA Cup obviously is something I've never seen us win. I've seen a final in the last one at Wembley against Chelsea. But it feels like for Villa generally as a kind of something that has been we've long been waiting for. And you hear fans older than me and you talking about it's the only thing they haven't seen the club win. Because 1957 is a long time ago. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think I think he will take Friday seriously, partly given what happened last night, but he has to, and it's great that it's sold out. It's great that, Friday night under the lights, the atmosphere tends to be a bit better in the evening games. So I just really hope that everyone on and off the pitch is from minute one, right, this is our real opportunity this season to try and change that narrative around our FA Cup experience.
Do you think he had one eye on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I said to you before we came on, I was doing a phone in on our local radio last night, and the guy actually said to me, he said, "Oh, the lineup looks to me like he's focused on Friday." And at the time, I didn't actually agree with him, so I thought it sort of felt a bit like a lineup that we would have played away from home at times last season. But actually, in retrospect, I think that particularly given the performance, given the fact that maybe Rashford and Asensio weren't really involved until the game was pretty much, had gone away from Villa, at least in terms of the patterns of play. I think maybe he does, and maybe he's actually thinking, well, Friday and Tuesday are my priorities. But that in itself is quite a risky strategy, isn't it? Because if we're looking to get into Europe again next season, which I think is so important for the club, if we're looking to do that through winning a cup competition, then obviously that is a higher stake kind of game to play, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, he has always mentioned that the Premier League is the priority. He mentioned that last year. And I do kind of feel like he's switched that attention a little bit to this FA Cup. It is risky in the sense of sort of like pinning it all on that. But I do think he has sort of had an eye on this. So we'll predict the lineup then. You're in uncharted territory here, Ivan, because I don't think we've done this together before. But I'm interested to see what you're going to come up with then. So you've got to pick the goalkeeper and the back four. What are you going with? And what do you think? Because we'll caveat this with we don't know what's wrong with Martinez. So
no.
What are you thinking?
Okay, well, I mean, I think but if we assume Martinez is going to be fit, he has to play to me. So I think we go with Emi. If Emi's fit, he starts. It's a big game. Again, right back to because there was no sign of Matty Cash on the bench last night, was there? And he obviously was fuming at Garcia at points, and then decided to put Leon Bailey on his right wing back. So I think I am actually going to go with Garcia because I think Cash clearly wasn't fit against Chelsea. He wasn't on the bench last night, so I think Garcia plays there. I think Mings comes back in to play with Konza. Obviously, Disasi is cup tied, so that kind of, again, don't think there's a huge option there. And I think Ian Maatsen plays left back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you think there's a world where Emery rests Martinez for Tuesday, or do you think he just goes with Martinez?
Well, I mean, like you say, we're in uncharted territory because we're not quite sure what happened at half time last night, whether he was ill, whether he was, who knows. So, if he's fit, I think he plays because I think we have to trust Emery in this, that he knows that these two games are really important, and I think if he's fit, he starts 100%.
Do you think Bogard plays at CDM or not?
I think I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I've always liked Lamar. I think he's a really good versatile player. I thought he didn't do himself any massive favours last night, but no one did. I mean, I don't think he made any massively critical mistakes. I mean, some stuff I was reading was a bit critical of the way he sort of moved away from Sarr for his second goal, but I didn't really see that. I think that, you know, that's what centre defenders should do. You know, you've got to move out. But I think that the bigger question is kind of whether McGinn and Tielemans need a bit of a rest, you know, or at least one of them. So in that world, I think, you know, wouldn't be surprised if maybe Bogard started as like that anchor a little bit in front of them.
Yeah, because I think if I had to pick a player that needs a rest, I'd say Tielemans.
Yeah,
he's played literally every game for Villa, so
yeah,
I could see Bogard playing as sort of like the CDM, which would mean Garcia will go forward. Bogard can sort of cover that area. So do you think we could maybe see McGinn where Tielemans plays?
yeah. I think that's a good shout, and I think probably McGinn, although he did look a bit tired last night, I think there's, you know, he's the captain of the side, and you know, we always look better when he's in the side. So, and I think actually in these past couple of games before last night, where he has been in the centre, I think he's looked pretty effective there. So yeah, I think I'd go with those two there. Yeah,
right. It's got to be firepower, hasn't it? We've got to.
Yeah.
Surely we're going to see Rashford. I mean, Marlon's got to play as well, hasn't he?
I mean, what is Donyell Mallon thinking right now? Because I mean, how he didn't get on the pitch last night is a little bit beyond me. So yeah, I mean, although I've got a sneaking suspicion, Luke, he might play through the middle with no Watkins.
Really, up front.
But that's
and
just.
You think he'll put Bailey out wide?
Yeah.
You think Bailey could go out and then Asensio off Marlon?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I like this. I like it. Why?
I just think maybe Ollie, he takes him up because, you know, we've got, you know, again, if we're sort of thinking, it's a bit like, you know, obviously there's no Disassi, but it's a bit like picking Maatsen at left back. You think, well, Luca Dean's probably going to play against Bruges, so therefore Mallon can't play on Tuesday. So I just think, yeah, you know, from the start up front, Ollie back in for Tuesday kind of makes sense in my head. But yeah.
Well, this is our lineup. I think it works. I think it's definitely better than the one that started against Palace anyway. It looks more like us. So yeah, I think that should do the job really. What do you think the score's going to be then?
I'm going for a Villa win. I think that, you know, we will have enough. I can't believe that we'll keep a clean sheet, so I think I'll go for a 3-1 Villa win.
Yeah, I mean, we've just got to win, haven't we? I think that's the bottom line. We've got to win, got to play well. And again, it's like we need a win now to put us in a good frame going into that game against Bruges, really. So, Ivan, it's been great having you on. Great chatting to you again. Congrats on writing the book, and hopefully a lot of Villa fans buy it and enjoy it. So thank you, mate.
Great. Up the Villa.